Hello, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much to the sponsors. Today we will be talking about another book of the Rif Winfield series. This man is a hero in my eyes. He has accumulated incredible quantity of data, and that data is very, very useful for researchers and presumably also for ship modelers, since we are a somewhat limited finite number as maritime scholars. In this case, viewers to both channels are not exactly unacquainted with the Winfield books, but this one is, to me, particularly interesting. It is on the Spanish Navy. And we do not have much information on the Spanish Navy, despite this being one of the major forces in the world. For most of the age of sail, it either was in the top two or eventually sliding to the third or fourth largest. The Spanish Navy was, after all, one of the major players in the age of sail. From the 17th century, with the rebuilding, really the rebuilding of the Navy and the professionalization happened after the Spanish Armada campaign. Shortly after it, the Crown started ordering ships specifically for Crown purposes rather than repurposing merchant vessels. This was not always possible because the 17th century was a challenging period of crisis for the Spanish Crown, where it had to fight fires pretty much all over the world against numerous and powerful enemies. And the resources of Spain, after all, were limited, despite the wealth coming from the New World colonies and their trade with the New World. But Spain had a fairly small population, and navies are hungry of manpower. Not only navies, but so are the armies. And of course, the army was more important in the 17th century for Spanish interests even than the navy. So they attempted to do something that ultimately did not really work out very well for them. They attempted to create a universal class of ships that will do both jobs at the same time. That on the one hand side, they will be good merchant ships and be capable of carrying significant quantities of cargo, specifically between the colonies and the mother country. And at the same time, they will be well-armed, maneuverable, fast, and will be able to serve also as substitutes for warships. That, as you can well imagine, did not work out that well. Here I'm going against the grain of a book that I recently was reviewing for a publisher, where the author was arguing that this was a brilliant, unique idea that no one else had thought of, combining the two things. The result was, of course, that ultimately they lost control of the seas and gradually sank to a secondary naval power status. There are many reasons why this happened. Perhaps another video at another time can be dedicated to this. One of the interesting things, ladies and gentlemen, is that we know more about how the Romans built ships and used them than we do about 17th century Spanish shipbuilding. And the fault for this lies squarely in the hands of treasure hunters. This is not the time or the place to waxing at the morally superior. I'm not concerned with the fact that treasure hunters are making money, because the majority of them do not. They make it from the investors who pay them to go search for shipwrecks, not from the shipwrecks themselves. Basic fact. Perfect Ponzi scheme. But this is neither here nor there. What is of concern to me is that the process that they follow is destructive. We know for a fact that Atocha, for example, the famous galleon discovered by treasure hunters, was in fairly good state of preservation prior to their, destruction of the site. There are no sketches, there are no drawings, there are no measured documentation of these vessels. And this is the tragedy, because this is unique information that only a shipwreck can give you. Because for most of the 17th century, we do not have original ship drawings. They were not part of the process. The crown, whether it is the Spanish crown, whether it is the French crown, or whether it is even the English crown, let alone the Dutch Republic, They ordered ships by tonnage, by length, by number of guns, but they did not send or request ships drawings, full set of ships drawings. They'll give a specification. And that specification will be the job of the specific shipbuilder to interpret and put together in practice. That is why ship archaeology is the only way that we really can learn. But because of the treasure hunters, we know very, very little about Spanish naval vessels of this period. And this is actually underlined by this book. I'm hoping that eventually Mr. Winfield and his colleagues will put together something on the earlier list of Spanish vessels. But this one, as you can see, begins only in the year 1700, because this is the period in which we begin to see more regular administration, naval administration and documentation, essentially bureaucracy. So much as we love to hate the bureaucracy, the truth of the matter is that they are very useful people if they're doing their job properly. And the Spaniards were the granddaddy of bureaucrats, in the best possible sense of the word. This book is, as you can see, quite large. It is looking into the history of development of the classes. Essentially, this is the beginning of the Bourbon period. After the end of the Habsburg monarchy in Spain, with the death of Carlos, who died without children, the crown was to be inherited by the grandson of Louis XIV of France, specifically Duke Philippe, who eventually would end up reigning as Philippe V. That, of course, began the long and serious war that lasted around the world, all over the European continent and into the New World, known as the War of Spanish Succession. A very interesting period, both from naval point of view, also from land warfare, subject to quite a few legends and misrepresentations, but it is also the period when the French influenced strongly the Spanish Navy, since they supported the Spaniards in the war. But in this period also we begin to see the systematic growth of the Navy. The Spanish monarchs of the new Bourbon dynasty were perfectly well aware of the needs of their empire. They recognized that they have to have a powerful fleet, and this fleet has to be adequate for the tasks. They did not have to dominate the seas the way England intended to do it, but they did have to be able to maintain communications with the New World. Contrary to what popular literature and Anglo-Saxon centrist films will tell you, the Spaniards were actually highly successful. Not only did they build beautiful, powerful, strong, long-lasting ships, many of them in Havana, which explains the longevity of the ships, since tropical hardwoods were used for their construction, but also they maintained them well, they maintained the administration, and they more than held their own against numerous enemies in financially and economically difficult situations, all the way until the end of the Age of Sail, really, until the Battle of Trafalgar, and a little after it. The Spanish Navy maintained a serious enough presence on the high seas to be of concern even to the British. This book is shown in more detail in the SYSTER channel. Link to the purchase of the book is down below. You will see it. I think that this is one of the most important and interesting of the contributions of Winfield, partially because I do happen to be interested in the Spanish Navy, but also partially because so little information is widely available. So few books are available in English that are telling the story from the Spanish point of view. Usually it is obviously the Anglo-Saxon point of view. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you top of the day. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching, liking, and especially sponsoring the channel. Goodbye.